Hey, what is going on, guys? This is the SS Ultimate Goku. Back with another video, and to talk about the news about Venom 2 and the new director. So Andy Serkis will be taking over. Ruben was the previous director, and for Venom. It's an interesting move. We had heard the previous director had, he had other obligations that he had in other projects. So this could have been a possibility to the change. There's been other theories that this was in the works no matter what he was scheduled to do. I don't really care who the director is as long as the movie's good. First movie was great, and the second movie should just be just as great. I don't think really that much is going to change because the director changes. I mean, Venom 2 is clearly going to be a direct sequel to Venom 1. It's not going to be a soft reboot or any of that stuff. It's going to clearly be coincide with the first film. We already know who the main villain of Venom 2 is. It's going to be Carnage. It's going to be Maximum Carnage. Venom 2 might be called Venom Maximum Carnage. Venom's going to it's going to be the same actors, it's going to be the same everything, really. Now, Andy's more experienced with directing, so the film will probably be a little better in terms of CGIing and effects, because he's a lot better at this stuff than the previous director was. So there's going to be that stuff there that's going to make the product a lot better. But I think the franchise is still going to be just as great, no matter who the director was going to be. As long as we keep that same atmosphere going. The film will obviously be next October, not this October, next October, October 2020 release for Sony. And what I think, there's a lot of time from then until now. A lot of stuff can happen, a lot of things can change up to that point, in terms of where they're going with this and what they're gonna do. I think we got a really good thing going right now, and I don't exactly know. There's always the rumors. I mean, there's gonna be rumors about the MCU involvement, no matter what. There was for the first film as well. I don't think. I'll say it again. I don't think the MCU will be involved. I have zero, at least at this time, 0% chance of that happening. I think Venom 2 is fine on its own. I don't think they need any MCU elements. I like the story they're going with just having Venom in there. I don't really care for Spider-Man. I never have. I've never liked Spider-Man. I like Venom. I like the story they're going with just having Venom in there. And putting Spider-Man in there, I think, would diminish it as a Venom film anyways. By having Spider-Man in there, especially with the story that they're setting up for Venom. It doesn't exactly mean they won't have a Spider-Man in there, whether it be a Sony Spider-Man, different Spider-Man. I mean, there's multiple Spider-Mans they could use. I mean, they don't have to use Peter Parker Spider-Man. They can use Miles Morales. They can use Gwen Stacy. There's been rumors about Gwen Stacy being getting a film at some point. Maybe Sony will do that. I don't know. They hold the cards for those characters. Because they just did the Into the Spider-Verse, which was another successful film that was on their end. So the sky's the limit when it comes to what Sony can do. They kind of hold the cards, really, when it comes to, what's going to happen. The MCU stuff. I mean, Spider-Man Far From Home somehow made $1 billion just recently. So, probably they're going to have a sequel solo film for that. We'll see where that goes. I personally, people are wondering what the contracts are and all that stuff. I mean, in the Instagram post, some people are talking about how Andy basically, tweeted out, or not tweeted out, put a tag in the Instagram post about Marvel Studios, which is different, obviously, from Marvel in general. Especially when it comes to Sony making Marvel films, since that's their own thing. I just think that may have been an accident. I don't, Tom Hardy accidentally leaked Andy being the new director like a few days before it was official, so, and then deleted it. I think it's just one of those things where it's just an accident. I don't think they're involved. I don't think Marvel Studios is involved. I don't think they want to participate with it. Because it's Sony's own thing. You have to keep you have to keep Venom 1 canon. Like, it has to be canon, because you can't have the second film without the first film. The first film sets up the second film. It sets up the second film, so the director is going to still have to incorporate the past events of the first film. No matter what, that doesn't matter, because there's different directors that have been doing that all the time. When a director has to come in, a new director has to come in for a sequel. That's happened a lot. So that's not really an issue. But I do think Sony are getting a little more. They're getting a little more aggressive. I think this is more. I think this is more of an aggressive move than it is, a Marvel Studios, pushing, Sony to, say, put this guy in there, and we might, make it canon to our, our cinematic universe, because there's those rumors about that. No, I think this is more a move that Sony is doing themselves as an aggressive move to try to make the sequel the best they can possibly make it. The first film was great, but Sony was very, very conservative when it came to making the film. Like, in terms of the budgeting, in terms of the marketing, they were very, very, very conservative. They didn't really try to, push it out the envelope like you'll see with the MCU. They were very careful with the trailers. They were very careful with, what they said, leading up to Venom 1. They were very careful. They didn't really try to reveal that much. They were very conservative, because they didn't want because this was a huge deal for them, because this was their, I'm not going to count the MCU Spider-Man solo films here, because obviously that's pretty much Marvel Studio pretty much is doing everything for Sony. It's a Sony film, but it's not. It's a Sony film. It's a Sony film by label alone, but it's really a Disney MCU film that Sony's just getting the money for. So I'm not really counting those. But the last, film that they did in the Spider-Man universe with their, license for the films was obviously the failed Amazing Spider-Man 2, and obviously that film failing is what led to them making a deal with the MCU. So this is their first film that they did by themselves without the MCU's involvement that they had to get right. Because they didn't get it right, they'd be counting bags on the next day. They had to get that film right. They had to get that film right, and that's why you didn't really hear that much about Venom 1. in terms of like people talking about it as much. They weren't really talking about it as much. They weren't, really going out there to try and tell you what was going to happen in the film, because they didn't want you to know. They wanted you to go in there and hope for the best, that the film was going to be great, which it was. It was an absolutely great film, but that's why they didn't really put as much money as they could have to it. And this is where I think them trying to get more of an experienced director, no disrespect to the previous director, because I think he did a very good job with what he had to work with, and he being a much newer director, I think he did a great job with what he had to work with. But now for the sequel, I think Sony wants to be more aggressive and try, now that they know that this film can succeed without Spider-Man, without MCU's involvement, without any other elements. They want to try and get someone more experienced in there so they can kind of jam up the CGI a little bit better, and try to make the best better than what they could in the first film. And that's, I think they want, well, I'm assuming everyone wants to top the original, because that's the point. To make a sequel, the point of making a sequel is to make more than the first film, and it usually pretty much never usually happens in most cases. But that's the idea of a sequel, is that you can do even better than you did in the first film. That's the idea usually, and sometimes that doesn't always happen, but that's the idea. And so I think what Sony is trying to do is trying to put out the best product they can possibly do, and really try to capitalize now on what they succeeded on in the first film, with not really having done as much as they could have in promoting and marketing, and really try to get the best guys in there to really kind of crank this out to make this the best film. This is with Carnage now. Now we're getting Carnage in this film. So, you got to put the best thing out there, and that's why I think they're putting a new director in there for the sequel. I don't think it has anything to do with Marvel Studios or anything like that. I just think they want to put out the best product they can, and they want to get better. They want to get better with this film. They want to do better than they did in the first film. The first film worked, everyone loved it, but they want to do even better with this film. And now they got Carnage. And they're doing it exactly right. Now we got Carnage in this film, and we're going to see the big fight between Venom and Carnage. And that's going to be, something a lot of people are going to love to see. So that's where I think this Andy Serkis comes in with this. Is that, they think, we get a more experienced director, a guy who's worked in the MCU and has worked with Kevin Feige, and has worked with, and done all these other projects. And that's what I think they're thinking, is like, why not try to get someone that has this experience with these superheroes and put him in as the new director for the sequel, and we can make it even better than the first one. Because I think this franchise, the Venom franchise, can be $1 billion franchise. Venom 1 made around the same amount of money as the first MCU Spider-Man solo film, Homecoming. Made right around the same amount of money. Made right around the same money as it. And look what the sequel's doing. The sequel, Far From Home, solo Spider-Man MCU movie, has now passed over $1 billion. So what I think Sony is thinking right now is that, like, let's get someone from the let's get like a director that has experience in the MCU, Marvel, and let's get him in there, put him in the Venom 2, and let's see what we can do now with it. Let's see if we can double our money with Carnage now being in the film, for the majority of the film being the main villain, and let's see if we can make this $1 billion like the Far From Home Spider-Man made. That's what I think Sony's thinking, because they're getting the money for the Homecoming, or not Homecoming, the the Far From Home movie. But obviously they didn't make that film. Kevin Feige and the MCU made that film. But they're making the money for it. So they're looking at this and they're being like, well, if this is what the MCU can do, let's get an MCU experienced guy as the new director for the sequel of Venom 2, and let's see what happens. And let's see if we can make $1 billion on our own property, because they haven't done that yet. They've made $1 billion through the MCU, but they have not made over $1 billion on their own, Spider-Man character property. And obviously they got a couple other solo films coming up. Don't know if they're going to have any new anime movies coming up soon, but I'm assuming they're going to at some point, since obviously Into the Spider-Verse did very good for them. So I think this is where they're going with this. This is what I think they're thinking right now, is like, look what the MCU film just did for us, and we didn't do anything with that film. And look at this other film, which made almost around the same amount of money as the previous one did. For our sequel, let's try to get that $1 billion. Let's try to get what the MCU Spider-Man sequel just did. Let's try to get that. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I think. That's what I think Sony Pictures is thinking right now, and that's why I think they're doing this. That's why I think they made this move. This is why I think they made this move, and I'm hoping that it's going to turn out to be very, very well done. Like I said, I don't expect Spider-Man to be in this film. I think they're going to keep Venom the way he was, in terms of the way he looked. Because he doesn't have as you all know, he doesn't have the Spidey thing on his logo, because Spider-Man wasn't in the first film, and obviously probably won't be in the second film. So there's no reason for him to have that, because he never met up with Spider-Man. Spider-Man never got the symbiote, and he went right to Eddie Brock, and that's why it's like that. It makes sense. And unless they're going to have a Spider-Man in this film, which I don't think they will, unless if it's Miles Morales or maybe Gwen Stacy, because obviously there's interest with those characters since of what the Into the Spider-Verse film did. I think if they ever do make an appearance, it's going to be on the Sony side. By the way, it's not going to be on the MCU side of it, since that's kind of how these contracts are. Personally, I don't exactly know what the contract is for the MCU status. I don't know if they made a new contract or whatever happens with them. But I'm gonna assume that, like I said, that I believe the third solo Spider-Man film is gonna be like one of those things where you pick up the option. I don't believe like the rumors are right now. I think it's like, like in like sports, where it's like you get like you have that option to pick up, a team can pick up that option or whatever for an extra year or something like that in your contract. That's what I think it is with this right here, with that Spider-Man contract, is like Sony has an option to pick up the third solo film if they want to. And that's where I think that's where I think that whole thing is. But again, I don't really know for sure how that whole thing is working out for them, and I don't know if they have a new deal. We're probably going to find out more stuff in the coming months in terms of where their deals are going. But we're, in terms of, like I said, I don't think the Venom franchise is anywhere attached to Marvel Studios at this point. I honestly like it that way. I think the Marvel films now, with the acquisition, with Disney now officially getting Fox, you're gonna see less and less now because of it. Because obviously, with those studios gone, they're not going to have more superhero films coming out. You're gonna have less. You're gonna have less superhero films coming out now, because the X-Men. We don't know where Deadpool's going to be in the MCU, but all those films are gone now. It's like, now it's just going to be Marvel Studios, DC, and then obviously whatever Sony puts out. for Marvel, for the Marvel characters that they own. That's gonna be really it. So I don't know, but overall, like I said, I like the move here. They're gonna I think what they're doing here is they're gonna try to put out the best product they can with the second film, and they're gonna be more aggressive in the production of this film than they were in the first film. The first film, they were kind of very conservative with the way they approached it, but still turned out very good, so it's really irrelevant. But now I think what they're doing for the sequel is they're going to be very aggressive because they've seen what the Spider-Man MCU sequel film did, and they're like, look, we got to get a really good experienced director in there so we can try to double the money that we got for this first Venom film. And that's where I think Sony's thinking right now. But I'd like to know what